What's good? What's good? What's going on? I know y'all see the title. Is the Bible real? And how do I know I am a Israelite? Right? So, and it's very simple. But first, of course, we're gonna give all praises to the Most High. We do so on His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right? Who the world mistakenly calls Jesus Christ. So that's all praises to Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, right? So, well, yeah, like I said, it's very simple. So we're gonna deal with the first part of the question, because what people don't understand. I mean, a lot of times when people ask the question, "Is the Bible real?" Like, who wrote the Bible, or like, um, or they some might even say it's a white man's book, right? So so it's very simple, very easy to find out, But a lot of times our people don't like to actually read or do the research. And a lot of times, oftentimes, too, like when I talk to people, depending on what type of question they ask, I can tell if they actually ask saying that out of curiosity, or they just saying some stuff that they heard and they're repeating it. So, and the thing is, like, it's something called ancient manuscripts, right? Manuscripts, the ancient scrolls, uh, especially like the ones that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? For example. Um, so yeah, so it's like it's so we have ancient manuscripts that we can draw upon. So yeah, we might be reading the Bible in the English translation, but when you look at the ancient Hebrew and then you compare it to what we're reading today in the King James, it is, you know, identical pretty much. Like just give or take here and there, but it's pretty much identical. And like I said, that's provable, right? So it's just like you in school. It's a smart kid in class that get all A's, right? And then they do a test, and you have people that might want to copy their test, right? And so if you can't see that good like me, you know what I'm saying, you might be able to see a little bit, but then you might make a trying to copy, you might not all the way do it, correct, have the correct thing that they have on their paper, right? But so knowing that test that smart kids paper is the source for what you're copying down, we can always go look at the source. So that's what these called the manuscripts is called source documents, right? And you can always look at the source documents. And even so, you it's a Bible app you can get, um, the Bible Hub or the Blue Letter Bible app. Um, you can get the Bible dictionary, the lexicon, all that stuff. Then you can go to the original Hebrew and check out certain things and see how it matches up or what it's actually trying to say, right? So, like I said, it's not that hard. Then the Bible deals with history and prophecies. Archaeologists, scholars would tell you that um, that when it comes to recording history accounts, the Bible is 98% accurate, right? And that 2% is only the stuff that they still haven't discovered yet, right? For example, there's a nation in the Bible that the Bible mentioned, Moab, the Moabites, right? Which will be today uh, known as Chinese people, but their biblical nationality was Moab. So for a long time, archaeologists couldn't prove if these people actually existed, but they only had the Bible to draw upon. But then they did diggings and archaeology stuff in the area where the Bible said that these people lived at, and then they found something called the Moabite stone, proving their existence. So many different civilizations that the Bible spoke of that with a little, with archaeology doing their little archaeology stuff, digging in the ground, excavating, they found proof of these things, right? So you have archaeology. That's why you always hear me say that prophecy, history, and archaeology back up the stuff that we're saying, right? And then we have prophecy, right? And prophecy is given from, of course, from the Most High God Yahweh to whatever being that He chose to lay that prophecy on to explain what's going on. Like for example, right? Uh, let's go to Isaiah first. Now Isaiah, prophet Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. Now there's a historical figure by the name of Cyrus, right? He ruled the Persian Empire, right? We know that through history. So now check this out. How many of us know that Isaiah predicted Cyrus' rise by name, not just some vague stuff that he said that can be interpreted any type of way. He actually predicted this man's name by 200 years. Scholars will tell you that because Isaiah lived 200 years before anybody even thought about a Cyrus. But just check it out, right? This is Isaiah 44 and 28. Then it says, that said, Osiris, he is my shepherd and shall perform my pleasures, even saying unto Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and the temple of thy foundation shall be laid. Right? So, speaking of this man 200 years before he even born by name, how could he do that? Only from the Most High God giving him that vision and, in that prophecy to be able to see that fire. Then let's jump to the next chapter, Isaiah 45. At the top, it says, thus said the Lord to his anointed Cyrus, whose right hand I have holded and subdued nations before him. 200 years before this man was born, right? 200 years before this man was born. So, you see, and like I said, this is stuff that's easily, you can look this up and you see that he was being talked about 200 years before being born. Thank you. 200 years before he was being born. Then I know some people might trip on the fact that he's called Cyrus the Great. I mean, Cyrus, the Lord's anointed, right? And that's only because God had chose Cyrus to take down the Babylonian Empire, right? Just like now in current day, God has chose whoever is leading Russia when this whole thing really kicks off. Right now, it look like it's Vladimir Putin, but he chose them to take down the Western power structure currently. That's that's what's going to happen in this coming war, right? So, it's not a mind-boggling that he would call Cyrus as anointed. That doesn't mean he's anointed like us, as far as like Israelite anointed. That just means that he chose them and he put a special charge on them to carry out certain things. And Cyrus ended up conquering, the Babylonians and taking over, right? So let's go to Daniel, another man that was able to see into the future. Now Daniel was able to look into the future to see all these different kingdoms throughout the ages that will rise up, right? And so he predicted the Persian Empire. He predicted the Greek Empire. He predicted the Roman Empire, and he predicted this current empire that we're living in now, and the one to come, which will be ours, right? So let's get Daniel. Let's get Daniel 5:2, right? No, don't touch that. Down. So it says, let me see, hold on. Matter of flicky. Let's get Daniel. Let's jump up to 25. Daniel 5:25. My bad, y'all. So now this is Daniel 5:25, and because we got to understand how God works, you know what I'm saying. So it says, and this is the writing that was on the writing. So now before I get into this, so this is a vision that Nebuchadnezzar's son is seeing, right? So this is right before the rise of the Persian Empire, the Persian and the Medes. So, so Daniel was breaking down this vision that the Persian king had saw. So it says this is the writing uh, that was written. Um, me, Tekel, Shiran. This is the interpretation of that thing. Me, God has numbered thy kingdom, right? Then it says, and finish it. Teka, art thou weighed in the balance and are found wanting. Meaning he was going to end up, Daniel was letting him know that God was getting ready to strip the Babylonian kingdom from him and give it to the Persians and Medes. Then it says, um, thy kingdom is thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So he's letting them know the Persians and the Medes is going to take over. Now, when you look at history, Babylonians was was in power. Then right after Babylonians, the Persians came. Then after the Persians, the Greeks came. Then after the Greeks, the Romans came. Then after the Romans, Britain and America and France and all of them came. Right. So we're gonna prove all that. And Daniel saw these things. So when we understand the biblical prophecies of the Bible, we see that this thing is true because we can look through history and see that these things happen. And then there's so much other prophecies in the Bible that have not came true yet. And so we know if these things came true, then the other stuff is going to come true. Because the Bible says if he say something and it has not, if a prophet say something and it does not come to pass, that he is a false prophet. So these people are not false prophets, right? So then, so let's keep reading. So then it says, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with a scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and proclaimed concerning him that he should be third ruler in the kingdom. And that night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. So he died that night. So right after Daniel gave him the prophecy, he ended up dying. Then it says, and Darius the Medes took the kingdom behind about three scores and 2 years when he was three scores and 2 years old, right? So he's 60. So Darius was 62 years old when he took over Persia, right? Basically. So like I said, so we see how Daniel is able to see things in the future. Just jump up to chapter 2, right? Let's jump up to chapter 2. Let's go to chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, and we're going to start at 25 first, right? So Daniel chapter 2, 25. And hold on one second, y'all. So yeah, Daniel 2 in 25. Then it says, then Arnok brought Daniel before the king in a haste and said, thus unto him, I have found a man in the captives of the Jews, because we was in captivity to the Babylonians at this time. So he said of the Jews of Judah that make that would make known unto the king the interpretations. Because if you're familiar with Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream of a statue, right? And so now Daniel is about to give him this interpretation of this dream, of the statue. And when you understand the statue is dealing with governments and civilizations that's going to come right after the Babylonian Empire, right? So, and it reads, this is so just jump down to 29. Then it says, and just jump all the way down to 29. Then it says, as for thee, O king, thy thoughts come into thy mind upon thy bed. What should come to pass hereafter? And he that reveals secrets maketh known to thee that, what shall come to pass, right? So, and who's that he that reveals secrets? God. Hold on, 1 second. It's a lot here. So it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, and he that reveals secrets uh, known to thee shall come to pass. He, but as for me, the secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living. So Daniel's like, I don't know these things because I just do. He's basically saying he's getting these things because the Most High God is, giving him the revelation on it, right? Because that's the one that knows everything. You can't know nothing unless the one that knows everything give it to you, right? So it says, where am I? Boom, boom, boom. But for their sake, that shall make it known to the interpretation of the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. O king, sawest to behold a great image. So you get into the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. It says, O king, uh, saw a saw and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, right? And his belly and his thighs of brass, and his legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part clay, right? So now, before we go on, so now he's describing these different nations that's going to rise into power in the future, right? So that head of gold is the Babylonian Empire, which was the greatest empire that ever was. I know, we say America is the greatest empire, all that stuff, but Babylon was politically and, militarily, all that stuff, they was great. So that's why they have the gold, because gold is like precious metal, it's expensive, right? So then as you work your way down, the statue is listing lesser metals, right? Even though some of these metals might be, because gold is soft, right? Gold is easily to be molded and all that stuff. Gold is soft, but as you start working your way down the statue, it started explaining these different nations as different types of lesser metals, but some of them might be harder than others, right? So then it says, boom, boom, boom. Then it says the his breast and arms of silver. So now this is the Persian Empire, because the Persian came right after them. Then it says, boom, boom, boom. Where am I? His belly and his thighs of brass. So now this is the Greek Empire. The Greeks came in. Then it says his legs of iron. Now his legs was the Roman Empire, right? And like I said, now these are things that scholars will, can contest to. They will, back these things up. So we're not just saying things, you know. Then it says, in his feet, part iron and part clay. This is talking about the America in the EU, because their feet is part iron and part clay. And we know that iron and clay doesn't mix, so they're partly strong and partly weak, right? They're weak because they have to rely on each other to get things done. Like they have what they call a democratic system where they have to vote on things, right? Certain things can't happen unless they all agree, and we know that oftentimes they don't always agree on things, right? So let's move on. So it says, then was the iron of clay, the brass and the silver and the gold broken into pieces together and became like a shaft of the summer threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So who's the stone that smote the image? That is Yahweh, who the world calls Jesus, who the world calls Christ. That's him coming back with his millions and millions of angels to crack the sky open and destroy all these kingdoms, right? So then it says, to smoke the image and became a great mountain. That mountain, like we understand that whenever the Bible speaks about mountains, it's talking about nations. So it said so Israel's gonna become that great mountain, that great nation. We're gonna be the top hegemony. So it says that great mountain filled the whole earth because we're gonna be running this whole thing. Like how America right now is running this whole thing. And it says, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. So Daniel explained the man's dream to him, right? So then it says, and this is how you know this is spiritual, because Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that he couldn't remember. So he was getting ready to kill all his advisors if they couldn't tell him the dream that he couldn't remember himself. So now Daniel, being a man of God, was able to repeat the dream to him, that Nebuchadnezzar had forgotten. Because that happens to us all the time. We go to sleep, we have a dream, we wake up, and we can't remember not one part of the dream. We might remember this little smidges of it. So as Daniel explaining it to him, then he's thinking like, oh yeah, that's right, that did happen. I remember now, right? So it says, O king, art thou the kings of kings, for God of heaven hath given thee the kingdom and power and strength and glory. So he's letting them know, you basically that golden part of the statue. And wheresoever the children of man dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven, he had given unto thy hand, and had made thee ruler of them all. Thou art the head of gold. So he's letting them know you are the head of gold, right? So he says, after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another. So now that kingdom that rose up after the Babylonian was called the Persian and Medes, and they were inferior because they were made out of iron. His kingdom is made out of gold. That is a lesser metal. Iron is stronger than gold, but it's a lesser metal, right? Meaning in worthlessness, like how how worthy it is, right? So now So we're getting into these predictions and seeing how he's predicting these different nations growing up, coming up, right? So now, so it says, boom, where I'm at. So it says, then inferior nation, then a third kingdom of brass. So that third kingdom of brass was the Greeks. So now, but now the reason why now, all right, backtrack. The Persian Empire was inferior because they were politically weaker, but military stronger because they did end up taking out the Babylonians. That's where the iron part come in because they were stronger than the gold. Because gold is soft, you can take a hammer and beat gold into a certain shape that you wanted, right? So, but they were weaker because when the Persian when you get into the whole, because Nebuchadnezzar was the man. When Nebuchadnezzar say something, it happened. But the Persian rulers, they was a little more, well, just keep everybody happy. Just don't step on nobody's toes. I mean, we can, just try to be cool with everybody. So then they was, easily influenced by their advisors that they had alongside with them, right? So then, so let's go on. So it says, and another third kingdom of brass. So now this is the Greeks, which bear rule over the earth. So now the Greeks came into power. So we know history. Now that we're living in 2023, we know what empires came after which empire. We know the Babylonians was one of the greatest civilizations. Then after that, you have the Persian and the Medes. Then after that, you have the Greeks, right? So it says, the third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all earth. And the fourth kingdom should be strong as iron, much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things. And the iron is should break all of these. it shall break in pieces and bruise. So now it's talking about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was ruthless. When they came in destroying everything, right? And so that they came in powerful after the Greeks, right? They absorbed the Greeks into their empire and all that. So they took over everything and subdued everything, right? Then it says, whereas thou saw the feet and toes part potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided, and that's what America is right now. They're divided. You know, they're divided in ideologies, political fashions, race, everything. America is divided. They try to push this oneness, like we all just one Americans, but that's just on the surface. But when you actually know, America is divided. Then their counterparts, England, France, all these different areas where they created this melting pot, is divided. That's why. And then on a political level, you have the European Union and NATO. They fight amongst themselves. You know, that's why the Bible tells you too that a lot of these countries that's teamed up with America, they're going to end up turning on America, right? So it says, it says, and as whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes and the potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be no strength in the iron, for much as thou saw the iron mixed with clay. Meaning, like I said, they're mixed with. So, like I said, they're partly strong and partly not, because we have something called the uh the the House and the Senate that in the government, right? So the House and the Senate has to agree with each other to get a law to be passed. So if they're not on one accord, then that bill is just going to sit on the desk, right? And it says, verse 42, and as the toes of the feet are part iron and part clay, so is the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. So they're partly strong because of their military. They have military might. You know what I'm saying? They got military bases all over the world. They can call a strike on any country at any given time whenever they want to. Right? So they're strong in that matter. But politically, they don't get along because they have to vote on everything. Everybody has to see eye to eye. Right? So that's where their weakness come in at, because they're not, like I said, they don't have just that one, person that's make the decisions. They all have to decide on certain things, right? And then that's what make them weak, because that can be exposed, and that's where all the corruption come in. People come in to the politicians, giving them money to do this and vote that way. Saying people paying the presidents to do this and make those type of laws and all that stuff, right? That's where the weakness come in at, right? And it says, and whereas thou saw the iron mixed with myrrh and clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. That's why they call America the melting pot. We got all types of nationalities in America. And like I was saying earlier, they try to push this narrative like we're all one. But it says they should mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they should not cleave to one another. So that's called racism. There's a lot of racism in here. Everybody is for themselves, in these countries, right? That America, Britain, these Western European countries, right? So it says, whereas thou see the iron mixed with myrrh and clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of man. The seed of man is talking about the lineage of people, all these different, like I said, different nationalities. But they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is mixed with clay, right? So, like I said, that's why we have this disorder that's going on in America, this racism, all these different groups that's this separatism, all these different groups want to be here and be there, right? Because even though we all here together, but we don't mess with each other like that, like how we should, right? Or how they would, I can say how we should, but how they portray it to be. Then it says, in the day of these kings. So this is how we know. This is another way how we know that we're at the end of the world now. That we're next. When I mean next, meaning we're next in rulership on this thing. Because it says, in those days So God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. That's the Israelites ruling. That's the kingdom of God, and our king being Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly called Jesus. Right? So it says, in that day of the kings, Yahweh of heaven shall set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. Meaning, we're not gonna be mingling with the seeds of men, right? You're gonna have to be an Israelite, to run this thing, right? That's how this gonna go. And then it's not gonna be none after us. We're gonna rule forever, ever, ever, right? So that's what it means by the kingdom will not be left to other men. Like how Nebuchadnezzar was doing this thing. He was a great king. Then all of a sudden, Darius came in, and the Persians and the Medes destroyed them. Darius and them was doing their thing. Then the Greeks came in and took down Xerxes and them, right? So that's not going to happen to us because we have a Yahweh Shah, a big brother, and who the world calls Christ, that's going to fight and subdue all these nations, and they all going to have to come to us, right? Then it says, in those days, these kings shall Yahweh of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So that's how we're going to get down when we get power. Ain't no other nation coming in after us. We're going to stand forever. So yeah, we have to go through the hell that we go through here in America, all the little stuff, that we have to go through. But when we get there, after this World War III stuff happened, because this is very soon. When you watch the news, you see right now we're in the time of the toes, the feet and the toes, the clay mixed with iron, you know, and we see that's where we're at right now with because all these other nations came and went that ruled. So this is how we know the Bible is true because we have prophecies to line up on. Just like how I showed you how Isaiah spoke about Cyrus 200 years before the man was even born, right? The parents wasn't even around, right? And it says 45, for much as thou sawest the stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands, this is talking about Yahushua and the Israelites, it shall break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, the gold, and 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 the great Yahweh has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and a dream is certain, and its interpretation thereof sure. So Daniel tell him this is going to happen. So this is what God was trying to tell you in your dream, that all these nations going to rise up behind you after your kingdom is done. All these other nations going to come behind you, right? So we know these things. So like I said, we're in 2023, so we know all those different nations came into power. So right now we're at the bottom of the statue, at the feet in the clay. We're living in that nation, and the Bible just said that that is going to be the last ruling kingdom before Jesus come back. So that's how we know that we're in the last days. I know from the time that we were kids and our grandmas was kids, everybody talking about we living in the last days. But we know it for sure when we read these prophecies and see that the Bible tells you that America and the EU, because that's what the 10 toes come in, right? Because that's the European Union, um, will be ruling at the end, right? So let's get Isaiah 8 and 20, right? So Isaiah 8 and 20 says, to the law, and this is how, because this is how you read the Bible. This is how you know when you go to church, pastor don't you know, teach. He like I said, it's nothing but a motivational speech, right? Nothing wrong with getting a motivational speech, but the problem is he's holding a Bible in his hand and convincing you that he's telling you the words of God. But all is he doing is giving you a nice, good pep talk that you can get from a good friend that care about you, right? So, or just anybody, you can get inspiration from anything. But the problem is, like I said, he's holding the Bible while he's doing it. So it says, this is how you know this is how you know the Bible is true, or this is how you know to believe somebody when they're speaking about the Bible. It tells you right here. It says, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. So when pastor get up on every Sunday and probably read one verse, maybe two, and start freestyling for about a good 35 minutes, it says, because there is no light in them, right? That's why, because he don't have the breakdown. He went to cemetery school, or what they know as seminary school, right? I call it cemetery school. So they learn a doctrine there. They learn to teach what the slave master told them to teach. The white man that set up them schools, they have a curriculum that they supposed to teach. Just like when you go to any school, when you go to school, a teacher supposed to teach a certain curriculum at that school. If the school officials find out that they're not teaching that curriculum, that person can get fired, the school can get in trouble, probably lose their funding, right? So they have to teach what the government tells them to teach, right? So that's why they might shuck and jive for a good 30, 40 minutes, singing and dancing, on some stuff. Try to whip everybody up into a frenzy to get you to go into your pockets to pay them some money, right? They tell you that the laws is dead, but it tells you to the law and to the testimony. The law is the first five books of the Bible what Moses wrote. Then also the red letter in the New Testament what Jesus is teaching, Yahweh is teaching. That's the law. And the testimony is the prophets and what the prophets wrote. So, and they don't get on that. They just tell you, they just read one thing, or they might be talking about, like I said, they just talk about some hot button stuff, right? They talk about some fleshly things that get people riled up, and then, and we don't, like I said, a lot of our people don't read the Bible, so they don't know that pastor is sitting up there making up stuff, that's saying stuff that sounds nice, right? And but because when you actually read it, you find out that stuff is not in there. So it says, to the law and to the testimony, that they speak not according to this word, it's because the truth is because the light because there's no light in them, right? Meaning they don't have the knowledge. They ain't got the answers. Way. Let's get John 14 real quick. Okay, John 14 and 26, right? It says, but the Comforter is talking about the Holy Spirit, right? Because you gotta, like I said, you gotta understand this. Like I said, that's why it says, come. You have to from the law and the testimony. It's how you understand. If the Bible, if somebody's teaching the Bible and they're not coming out of the law or the testimonies, a lot of people say, well, and that's the problem. The church will say, oh, that's the Old Testament. A lot of Christians say, oh, you're reading out the Old Testament. But how did the Bible say? Read it again. It says, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So all them telling you to leave the Old Testament alone is because there is no light in them. That's why. So this is John. Now we're in the New Testament, right? So it says, now this is John 14 and 26. But the Comforter, which is the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things, right? So you have to have the Holy Spirit on you to understand this Bible, because it tells you once he send that Holy Spirit to you, it will teach you all things, right? Like I say all the time, I didn't go to no fancy school to learn this Bible. I just started reading and keeping the laws of God, because the Bible says when you keep the commandments of God, he will give you wisdom. That's how that works. Start by keeping the commandments of God, right? You can start by doing the little things. If you're a man, grow a beard on your face. Get you some fringes and little fringes and stuff like that, or tassels. Uh, if you're if you're a woman, you know what I'm saying? Like you can like I said, you put fringes on too. Get you a nice little dress, fringes on. Uh, stop eating all the stuff that God told us not to eat. It's a little. Start by doing the little things first. Then as you get good at doing that, then you can start. move into the other commandments and try to master them as well. Because I mean, none of this happened overnight. You know what I'm saying? This didn't happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, this was at least almost 10 years in the making, for me to get to this point, right? And I'm still not exactly where I want to be as far as, with the knowledge and understanding like that. But I'm better than where I was 10 years ago. I know that much, because, like I said, and I tell people all the time, I'm still the same person. I just keep the laws of God now. I just do what the Bible says we should do, you know. And I'm not a special person. I'm I'm a piece of garbage. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not this special guy, but by me keeping the laws of God and striving to be that guy, you know what I'm saying? That's how we get this wisdom and knowledge and understanding. That's how we are able to attain the grace of Yahweh, right? So it says, but the Comforter, which is the Holy Ghost, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance, whosoever uh, I have, and what I'm sorry, whatsoever I have said to you. So this is how we get the knowledge. The Holy Spirit comes and sit with you and teach you these things. But the Holy Spirit and that wisdom is not going to come and teach you and give you that understanding if you're not trying to meet God halfway by keeping the commandments. You know, not trying to steal from your fellow people, not trying to lie and rob them, or excuse me, trying to finesse them, do all these little things that we love to do to each other, right? Like I said, it's simple. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard. It tells you that the laws of God is not hard. It's just that we are naturally rebellious people, and we want to do what we want to do instead of doing what God asks us to do. Then it doesn't help when you got a church and a pastor that's going around telling you that the laws of God is done away with. That only thing you have to do is just believe in Jesus. And I ask people all the time, especially, I ask people, I'm like, well, Hitler was a devoted Roman Catholic. Uh, Vladimir Putin is, you know, is a devoted uh, Orthodox Christian. So, are you saying that you're gonna be in like just and they believe in Jesus? So, y'all both gonna all three of y'all gonna be in heaven together? That's how it works. Because all they have to do is believe. You know how many murderers on death row that believe in Jesus? So it's not a belief is not enough. You know, you have to act on it, right? It's the action. Belief requires action. So if you can believe all you want, but you need the action to go with it, right? And that's what they're not teaching us, that action. And the action is keeping the laws of God, right? Because it tells you to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them, right? So they have to be trying to teach you the law. They have to be getting into the testimony of the prophets to tell you what's going on. If not, it says because there is no light in them, right? Let's get Romans, right? Let's go to Romans. Let's go to Romans 10 and 14, I think. Romans 10, 14. So, yeah, Romans 10 and 14. It says, how then they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how should they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how should they hear without a preacher? So you need somebody that's actually teaching you what's really going on, because these churches is not actually teaching you what's really going on. That's why so many of our people don't believe in the Bible. They might say something stupid like it's a white man's book, right? When this Bible condemns the white man. This Bible, like, nobody says that about any other book. Like, nobody pick up the Egyptian book of the dead and be like, oh, well, this is a white man's book. Nobody pick up the book, the Hammurabi that the Hindus and them read and say, oh, this is a white man's book. But it's crazy that some people that will say they believe in God, but then they'll be quick to say that this is a white man's book, and they don't understand by saying that. Subconsciously, you're saying that the white man is God by saying those comments, right? And this Bible has nothing to, just like any other document about a civilization. Like I just use example for the Book of the Dead, the Egyptians. That has nothing to do with nobody else but the Egyptians, right? So why is it that the Bible, people get the Bible and they want to make it seem like it's a universal theme? The Bible never been universal to nobody. It only been for the children of Israel, because the Bible is a recorded record of the people of Israel, and how things went when they dealt with other nations. So that's why I say it's important to understand how the Bible came together. So when people ask these questions, I know that they're just asking questions because they have no knowledge on the matter, and they're just saying some stuff that they've been told. Because when you understand that these are different books and different scrolls, things that was written on different papyrus and other little things, and they just put them together in one book, right? Because the word Bible is a Latin word meaning "labilios" or collection of records, right? So it's just a collection of records of who? The Israelites, right? So we have to understand these things. So when we ask these questions, we have to first understand the lack of knowledge that these questions have, right? Because it's easy to figure it out. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's something called source documents where we can go and look these things up. We can go to the ancient scrolls and see what was written and compare it to what we have today. In the 1611 King James Version of the Bible is the closest to the ancient manuscripts. It is damn near similar, right? So it says, let's get let's go back to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah 28. Go to Isaiah 28. So Isaiah 28, let's start at 9. It says, to whom will he teach knowledge? And to whom will he make understand doctrine? So God is asking the question, who can he teach knowledge to? Who is he going to be able to make understand doctrine? Understand this, what he's trying to tell us, right? And it says, them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. So what is weaned from the milk and drawn from a breast? That's a baby, right? So to understand this book, you have to be like a little, like how Jesus was telling me, you have to come back like a little child. You have to come back like a baby to understand this book, because you have to forget everything you thought you know and relearn the Bible correctly. That's how you're going to understand this. What did Jesus say? You cannot put new wine into an old uh, wine jar, right? Because you're gonna spoil the wine. So you can't go with your own information. You can't come into this knowledge with what you learned in Christianity, and then thinking you can just mix that in with what you learning now. It will trip you up. You have to forget everything you thought you know. When I start learn, I always kind of did this. I ain't gonna say I always did it, but on this level, when I used to read the Bible, I always used to read the Bible like, well, I try to read the Bible like without already understand, without having my notions of what I'm reading. When I did read it, so I understood the whole concept of forgetting what you knew before you start actually learning the truth. Because if you don't forget what you know, then you're gonna try to figure those things and try to fit them in to what you're learning now, and that's gonna trip you up. That's gonna have you believe in all types of crazy stuff. You should see the stuff that I be seeing every day, of the stuff that people say that have no biblical foundation at all. They just be saying things because it sounds nice and it sounds deep. People are so worried about sounding deep that they drown themselves, spiritually, where they don't even understand. It gets to a point where it's like they're not going to understand anything that they're trying to. Nobody's going. It's crazy. That's why like pseudo stuff, like all these little different pseudo people, like your Ben Carsons, your who else is pseudo? All these different pseudo people. That's why they're so popular because our people love mythology. Our people love, you know, stuff that sounds so fantastic and so this wow, you know, that we don't understand how to separate fact from fiction. I like a good fantasy myself, but I understand that this is just a fantasy. It's not real. I can make that discernment and say, all right, well, that's not, biblical. Like, for example, some of those apocrypha books that they call, right? Now, when you understand, see, Greek culture and have just a little knowledge of Greek culture, then when you read some of these those hidden books, and you will see that some of these books have a heavy Greek influence on them. So, and knowing that if you're familiar, then knowing the Hebrew culture, we never mix our holy scriptures with any type of culture. So when you see them mixing, uh, trying to mix the Hebrew stuff with some stuff from Greeks, what the Greeks was doing or Egyptians was doing, then that's just fantasy. It might be entertaining. That's how I look at it. I might read like some of those books, like the current book of Jasher, Enoch, all these different books like that. I read it for entertainment, but I'm not taking it as like, oh, this is, you know, wow, this is deep. Cause I know once I get to a certain part, I understand. Wow, this is Greek now. This is like, cause I know a little bit of what the Greeks, how they practice things, right? So let's get what was that? Boom, boom, boom. Let's get Acts real quick. Let's get Acts 22. I mean 28 and 23. Right, hold on 1 second, y'all. Okay, let's see what that's. Hold on 1 second. Turn on this light in this fan. Like you got. Right. So yeah. Anywho. So now this is Acts 28 and 23, and it says, "And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him unto the lodging to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of God, persuading them concerning Jesus." So he's giving them. It says, let me read again. And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him unto his lodging, to whom he expound and testified the kingdom of God, persuading them concerning Jesus, both out of the law of Moses. Because now this is New Testament. This is Acts 28. This is way after the death and burial of Jesus, Yahweh. So now this is Paul, and he's teaching them from the law of Moses and out of the prophets from morning till evening. So even Paul, who everybody try to act like Paul don't tell everybody not to follow the law and all that stuff, they lying on Paul like he's telling you not to follow the law. It says that Jesus persuading them concerning Jesus, both of the law of Moses and out of the prophets from morning till evening. So Paul was teaching them from the books of the law, of and also from the prophets, right? So so that's another lie. See, this is how we know when it says, if they speak not according to this word, to that's because there's no light in them. So pastor would tell you, don't worry about the law, just believe in Jesus, everything's cool, right? I be having debates with so-called Christians all the time on about not keeping the law of God, that you don't have to keep the law. So I asked him, like, so is it okay for me to, sleep with your wife then? I mean, is that cool? Since, we don't have to keep the law anymore, then I should be able, you shouldn't get mad if I'm flirting with your wife then, right? You shouldn't get mad if I, go in your pockets and steal your money, right? I can kill you right now then, right? So it's retarded to think that the law is done away with. Church would tell you that the laws is done away with, but then every Sunday they pass a collection plate around about 4 or 5 times. But they tell you the law is done away with. And we give them our money. And then when you get into tithes had nothing to do with the money. We wasn't paying money about doing for tithes, but they don't trick you into giving them all your money when you go to church. Tithes was your crops, right? Your cattle, your crops, right? And not, I'm guessing a lot of us, we're not farmers out here. We don't own acres of land where we just farming stuff. So no, you don't give them that. This is what the Bible says. I'm just gonna paraphrase it for time's sake. So say like you because we have to go to Jerusalem to do the whole tithe and stuff, right? So the Bible says if you live too far from Jerusalem, whatever, like your crops, your cattle, you sell them and you get money for that, right? Then when you get to Jerusalem, whatever you sold with that money, you buy it back so you can. So you buy the crops back, you buy the cattle back, and then you give them. Then you give it to the temple, right? Or you can take that money and give it to the poor, give it to the fatherless, people that live in single parent homes. You know, you give it to the widows and all that stuff. That's what you do. You don't just give it to the pastor for he can get him a jet and get the new Maserati. That's not how this goes, right? But they'll tell you the law's done away with, but they're still collecting tithes, and we still foolish enough to give them our tithe money when the Bible tell you exactly what tithe is. It was your crops, and that was every 3 years. That wasn't every damn Sunday. That was every 3 years that you have to do that. All right. So let's get where I'm at with it. See, it got me going on a rant. So read it one more time, then we're gonna jump to our dear brother Micah. Right. So it says, read it one more time. It says, and they had appointed him a day there. Came many to him unto his lodging, and to he expound and testified the kingdom of God, persuading them concerning Jesus, both out of the law of Moses and out of the prophets, from morning to evening. So Jesus, I mean, my bad. So Paul was teaching from the prophets, morning to evening, right? And that's what they don't get into, right? So let's get hold on one second. Let's get Micah 2:7, right? From This is Malachi. I think it's Malachi. Yeah, let's get Malachi 2:7, right? So now Malachi 2:7 says Malachi 2:7. Hold on one second. Malachi 2:7 says, for the priest's lips shall keep knowledge, and they shall seek out of the law. So when you go talk to these pastors, you go to these churches, they should be teaching you the law, not whatever they feel like telling you that Sunday. It says, for the priest's lips shall keep knowledge, and they shall seek out of the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts. So that's how he's supposed to talk to you, through the law, because he is the messenger of God. And so when you go to church and they tell you not to keep the law, this is why you see me go so hard on these churches, because they're wicked. Because the Bible is telling you one thing, and some people can say, well, that's the Old Testament, but we just read in Acts that Paul was teaching the law and the prophets. He was trying to teach the people about Jesus, and he taught them through the laws of Moses and the prophets. And that's in Acts, and that's Acts chapter 28, and that's way after the death and burial of Jesus. Because people say, well, well, when Jesus was alive, it was about the law, but when he died, the law was no. So why is the disciples still teaching the law and and others, right? That's crazy. That's because we don't read. We go off of what people say, and we're reading this right here. We're not making stuff up. We're reading what the word says in the Bible, right? So now this is First Peter 2:7. Unto you, therefore, which believe he is precious, but unto them which be disobedient. Because a lot of our people are disobedient. Because, like I said, a lot of our people are just want to be rebels without a cause for whatever reason. Just want to be a rebel. Our people hate correction. Our people hate for somebody to say, "Hey, you're wrong for doing this. You need to stop doing that." Our people can't take it, because our people want to do what they want to do. But it says, unto you, therefore, which believe he is precious, but unto them be disobedient, the stone which the builders have disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner. So a lot of our people is going to reject the teachings of Yahweh Shai. But as you're rejecting the teachings of Yahweh Shai, who taught us to keep the law, because we're supposed to follow him, right? Who taught us to keep the law, you're rejecting the cornerstone of which this whole thing is built on, right? And it says, "And the stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense, even them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed." So basically saying, some of these people, God just got them, just jacked up. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to believe. You can explain it to them as simple as you could explain it to a 2-year-old, and they're just not going to get it, right? And it says, "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye shall show forth the praise of him uh, who have called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light." And that's what we've been called, out of the darkness into his marvelous light, with this knowledge and wisdom and understanding, right? So let's get so now let's get into the whole thinky thing about proving how we know that we are the Israelites, right? So now that part we was just going through, showing you prophecy. Let's do a quick recap. Showing you prophecies and giving you understanding of how we know that we are the people of the book, and or how the Bible could be trusted. Because just like how our dear brother Isaiah predicted a man 200 years before he was even born by name and told you what he was going to do, you know, we see that, right? Oh, dang, I'm forgetting one thing. Before we jump there, I'm jumping the gun. Let's get this one. We got to get this one. Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon real quick, right? Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14, and we're going to start at 14, verse 14, right? Now, this is our dear brother, our dear brother Solomon, right? One of the wisest people that ever lived. Let's see what he had to say. Now, this is another prophecy, right? Because to prove that how this Bible is true. Because a prophecy is something that is given and then it's told that it's going to, then you can see hundreds or so years later, even a millennium at a time, that it happened exactly to the T, right? So this is how we believe this Bible, because the Bible has prophecies that have been proven to be correct over and over and over again, right? This ain't no Nostradamus shit where, it might sound like this happened, or we're not sure if this happened or not, or we don't know what the hell he's talking about. No, we can read these prophecies and see that they happen, right? And then there's other prophecies that have not happened yet, that since we know all the other stuff came true, that has to come true also, right? So let's check out our big brother Solomon. It says we're gonna read down to 22. So it says, "For the vainglory of men they enter into the world, and thereof shall they come shortly to an end. Uh, for a father inflicted with untimely mourning, when he had made an image of his child, soon to be taken away." So now, who is this image of his child? This is talking about that Caesar Borgia picture, who a lot of our grandparents have hanging up in their house, where that who we may call Jesus, better known as White Jesus. You know that guy. So Solomon is predicting about this man who has a son, which was Pope Pius VI, and his son Cesar Borgia got sick, and and was dying. So he decided to have Leonardo paint him, and and then they propagated that image as Jesus, right? So it says, for a vain glory of men. Like I said, so by us living in 2023, we can look back at these things and see how they played out. So that's what I'm saying is, like, for anybody that be having questions about the Bible, if it's real or not, that let me know they either A, haven't studied and checked it out for themselves, because it's not that hard to figure out, or B, they're just repeating stuff that they heard other people say. So it says, for a vainglory of men, they enter into the world, and therefore shall they come shortly to an end. For a father inflicted with untimely mourning, when he have made an image unto his child, soon taken away, now honor him as a God. So that's who's that white Jesus on our wall? It says, now honor him as a God. And his name is Cesar Borgia. That's his real name of that image that we see, Cesar Borgia. So and I think Showtime had a TV show called The First Crime Family that talks about them, right? So it says, thus in this process, well, hold on, let's skip one, boom, boom, boom. Okay, which was which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifice. So, like I said, Pope Pius had Leonardo paint that picture of Cesar Borgia, who we call Jesus today, that white image, and it says they did ceremonies and sacrifices to it, right? So now this is Solomon. Solomon lived, down there about 3,000 years ago, and he's talking about this that happened in the 1400s, right? So it says, and thus in process of time, the ungodly custom grew strong and kept as a law. So this is why everybody believes, when you see this image, especially if you grew up how we grew up, and I thank God that my mom didn't have that. I mean, I seen it as a kid, but that wasn't a prevalent image in our house. My mom always found a black image of Jesus to hang up in the house. So, I mean, I was kind of lucky in that regard. But even though the propaganda was so strong, you know, when I see the white one, I still, in my subconscious, still recognize that one as Jesus. That's just how strong that propaganda is. You got the movies, you know what I'm saying? You got the pictures everywhere of it. Even though growing up myself, I always seen a black Jesus in the house, but the propaganda was real. So it says, of whom who could honor in presence because they dwelt off. Hold on, do right. Thus, in process of time, an ungodly custom grew strong and was kept as a law. And graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings. So people that were set up in rulership made it, a law for you to bow down to that image, for them to propagate that image, right? Then it says, uh, in whom man could not honor in presence because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his vintage, which means they made copies of that Cesar Borgia picture, who we call the White Jesus. Um, they made counterfeit of his vintage from far, and made a express image of a king whom they honored, and and to the end that by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent if he were present. So they made his picture. They went around the whole world, showcasing his picture, telling everybody this is Jesus, right? Also, the singular diligence of the artificer did help set forward the ignorance of more superstition. So then we got superstitious about these pictures where you can't talk bad about that picture. You can't be like, oh, that's white Jesus. You can't. What's that Good Times episode when Michael put up the black Jesus and his mom then there lost her mind when he put up the image of black Jesus. He's like, well, this is more what the real one would have looked like anyway. And she's like, well, this white Jesus is the only Jesus I know, right? So we become superstitious, where you can't, talk about white Jesus without somebody jumping down your throat, right? It's crazy. It says, for he, peradventure, willing to please one in authority, force all his skill to make a resemblance of the best fashion. So, like I said, he made that image to resemble Yahweh Shai, right? And it says, and so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god. So now we're looking at that image as he's God, because like I said, church tell you, go around propagating this white man as God, to the point subconsciously we think the white man is God. Like I said earlier about how some of our people will say they believe in God, but then they say the white man wrote the Bible. So subconsciously, you believe in that God is white. Your God is a white man, right? Then when I say that to people, it's like they have a brain freeze that they can't comprehend. That's what they're saying, right? Because if you're gonna say a white, because you don't learn about God nowhere else but in the Bible. So for you to say that the Bible was written by a white man, then you're technically saying that white people are God, right? By default. And ain't no white person got enough sauce, enough, anything, swag, not even clever enough to write what's in this book, all right? They don't talk like us. That's why this Bible is so hard to understand because unless you know how black people talk, you're not going to understand it because this Bible is written in metaphors and allegories. Because that's how we talk as a people. We speak in allegory. You know, when I say I got that fire on me, do I really got a match that's burning on me or walking around with fire attached to my body that's burning? No. We're talking about a handgun, a firearm. If somebody say, I'm getting that cheddar, do we really got are we really going to get some cheese? No, we're talking about money. That's how we talk, all right? That's how the Bible is written. That's how you know this Bible is written by us, because it talks just like how we talk. We just have to put ourselves in that time and understand the metaphors that they kicking, all right? So it says, and for the multitude allured by the grace of the work of him that now for a God, which little before was uh, was but honored. So yeah. Then it says, and this was the occasion to deceive the world for men striving either calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks and incommunicable names. So it says, let me read it again. And this was the occasion to deceive the world. So that's what happened. They deceived the world with this image. That's why in a lot of our people in their subconscious that white Jesus is embedded in their brain. When they go to pray at night, they see an image of a white Jesus instead of seeing a black Jesus, like it's described in the book of Daniel and in Revelations, that they describe him as a black man. Then it says, for man striving either calamity or tyranny, for man serving either calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks in a uncommunicable name. Meaning they was forcing people to to worship this idol, this picture, right? And it says, moreover, this was not enough for them that they erred in knowledge of God, but whereas they live in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues they call peace, right? So our people are so jacked up in the head on this image and white images of Jesus that the Bible calls it like basically saying it's a plague of the mind, but we look at it as peace, a bliss, because that's why we want to. That's that's why when we want to get together, we want to go move to white neighborhoods because we think that um, that's peace right there. We can move around these people. It's better. Is whiter is better. You know what I'm saying? We think it's cool to be in these neighborhoods, right? So it says, uh, but those great plagues called days of peace, right? So, like I said, because we think it's peace to be around these people, not knowing. Hold on, fix this camera, G. Hold on. I won't go. And boom. Have to fix this camera, y'all. But yeah, it's a like it. So yeah, we think that it's a honorable thing to live in a gated community surrounded by these psychopaths, potential school shooters, right? So let's get all right. So now let's get into uh how we prove that we are the Israelites, right? So let's get Jeremiah. I mean, and usually when I'm talking to somebody, this is how I started off, right? I know other people might have different things that they go through, but I start off this way because I like to start off with something that we both know historically happened, that we cannot deny that happened, right? So I go to Jeremiah 17 and 4, right? Excuse me. Jeremiah 17 and 4, right? So Jeremiah 17 and 4, it reads that even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage which I give thee, right? So what is your heritage? Your heritage is your customs, your culture, you know, how your people do, your language, your style of dress, the food you like to eat, right? So it says, even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage which I give thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not. Hold on, Shalakia, real quick. Right? So it says, even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage which I give thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in a land which thou knowest not. So we lost our culture, our heritage, our way of speaking, our way of dressing, our food that we like to eat, right? And now we're serving our enemies in a land that we wish we knew not, because our people didn't know about this place over here. They kidnapped us and brought us over here, right? So we know that happened because no other. If you take this prophecy and try to match it up with anybody else, nah, tape. Hold on, y'all. 1 second. Yeah. 1 second. But yeah, so it's a lock here, right? So we have you can ask anybody, and people know their culture. They, you ask them, where they from, the language, all that stuff. People still know these things about their own self. So when you try to master yourself about anybody from around the world, this only goes to us because we are the only people that lost our heritage and our culture of who we are, right? No other people can lay claim to that, so that's how we know who we are. We lost our culture and our heritage, like it said, even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. Right. So let's get so let's see how we lost our culture. Let's get Deuteronomy 28. We're gonna start at bum, 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 bum. We're gonna start at 37, right? So so it says Deuteronomy 28 and 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Lord thy God shall lead thee. So what is a proverb and a byword? Hold on, straighten this up a little bit. So what is a proverb and a byword? A proverb is an elevator can raise a family, but not a black man. All Mexicans carry knives. Black people are lazy. All these different things, right? That the little proverbs that they come up for our people, right? So in bywords is calling us anything outside of our name. They call us nigga, negro, uh, Afro American, named us after a hairstyle, Afro American, uh, Afro American, Afro pick. Uh, then now they're calling us African American, naming us after two continents. Like, you know, like that means something. I mean, if you want to be technical about it, Elon Musk is an African American. Uh, so these are different those are bywords. You know what I'm saying? Then calling our people Puerto Rican, Jamaican, Spanish, uh, Haitian, all these different names are bywords, right? Because that's not who we are. That's a name that they subscribe to us. So we know through history that happened to our people. Nobody else can say that. The person with the curly shit hanging from the side of their head and the little saucer sitting on top, they cannot say that. They would tell you, oh, well, we kept our history for 2,000 years. I heard them say that for 1,000 something years. So then that means you're not the people of the book, dummy. So how could you lay claim to something when the Bible tells you that in Jeremiah that you're going to discontinue from your heritage? Then over here in Deuteronomy, it tells you um, that thou should become an astonishment, a proverb, a byword among all nations, rather Yahweh shall lead thee. So you can't be those people there. That only apply to us. They got a word for nigga in every language. Every continent, all these different nations got a way to call you a nigga, right? So that's not them. You can't. You're not even allowed to say anything about those people without something happening. That's why I have to say those people and just physically describe them than just saying their name. Because I try to say it you know in a certain way, right? Because not that I'm scared to say it. I mean, because you already know that I'm not scared because I have said it, but I want this, be able to talk to the people, give them this information without no hiccups, right? So let's go to Acts 13 real quick. Let's get back to the New Testament because people don't understand this whole book is ours. There's no such, and the only reason why I'm saying New Testament, Old Testament It's because that's how colloquially we talk. But there's really no such thing as the Old Testament, New Testament. That's a new concept, right? So, but let's read this. So now there was a church that was in Antioch. So these are the disciples. They went into Antioch. So now there was in a church that was in Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon that was called niggers. So what did the Romans call us when we got to Antioch? They called us niggers. And this is Acts 13 and 1. And Lucius and Serani and and a Mannonite, which had been brought up with Herod the Tugrat and Saul, right? So they called us niggers. That's what they called us, right? They called us niggers. Let's get this real quick. I'm going to jump back to Deuteronomy too. So let's get Job 30 and 30. This is Job 30 and 30. What did he say? My skin is black upon me. My bones are burnt with heat. So even Job said he is black. So we got the New Testament disciples being called niggers because they're black. Then we got Job here, which is an Israelite, saying that his skin is black. Then he's saying that he's getting darker in the sun. Black people get darker in the sun. White people don't get darker in the sun. They get red, right? We look like bacon in the sun. Let's get let's go back to Deuteronomy. Let's get let's go to 41. Deuteronomy 28 and 41. This is how we know who we are. Because now we're proving how we do, because we know history. Like I said, we're in 2023. We can look back on time to see that these things actually happened. So it says, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, and thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Who that happened to? What people have their kids born into slavery, right? So you're a slave now. You have children. That's children as a slave. We all saw 12 years of slave. Even probably Roots. They sell your baby off to the next plantation or to the next county or maybe even to the next state. Right? It says, "Even thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity." That had not happened to the so-called Jewish man with the little curly shit on the side of his head and the saucer on the top of his head, right? It didn't happen to him. We cannot say that happened, right? The Holocaust is not in the Bible, but the transatlantic slave trade is, all right? That's the truth of the matter. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, and they shall go into captivity. But thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Let's jump down to 43. And the stranger that is within thee shall get above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. So what happens in our neighborhood when these foreigners come into our neighborhood with their businesses? They make thousands and millions of dollars off of us. Whether they selling us Chinese food, hair products, uh, cigarettes, liquor, whatever they want at gas stations, all that shit. They come into our community, they make all that money. Do they keep that money in our community? No. They take it back to wherever they came from, right? Then, like I said, and whenever we hook up with these people, it's tell us that the stranger that is within thee shall become above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. So whenever we are dealing with these people, they're always going to be in a position that's higher than us, and then we're going to be in a lower state, compared to them. Now, these are punishments to understand this chapter properly. These are a list. This whole chapter is a list of punishments that God said He would do to the Israelites if they disobeyed Him. And now these are not just one-time punishments, like I was telling somebody. These are not just one-time punishments. These are cyclical, meaning they 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 come and go. You know what I'm saying? They can happen. They It's not gonna just happen once. It's a continual cycle, and it's gonna happen until Yahweh Shah comes back, who the world calls Jesus. When he comes back, and hopefully that's soon, then that's when we're gonna actually get out of this what we call a generational curse, right? So it says, and a stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. And he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. And he shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. That's what happened. You know what I'm saying? We don't own those no banks, no lending companies, and all that credit company stuff. We got to go to them to get money. If we want to open up a business, we have to go to one of their facilities to open up this business, right? And it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee until thou be destroyed. And that's what we are as a nation. We are destroyed. We don't know which way is up, you know, and we think so messed up that we think it's better to be around them. That we can get some type of sense of existence of being around them. We are destroyed. We don't know that being connected to them is the source of all of our hell, right? Then it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and thou shalt pursue thee and overtake thee until thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God to keep his commandments. And that's the problem. We're not keeping the commandments. And then, like I said, church don't make it no better because our people don't know the commandments. They might know of the 10 commandments, which is more than 10, and the 10 commandments, they don't keep those, right? It says, this is happening because we don't keep the commandments. As long as we're not keeping the commandments, all of these things is going to continue to happen. Then it says, moreover, all these curses shall come in upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee until thou be destroyed, because thou hearkens not, meaning we don't listen to God, not unto the voice of Yahweh thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Right? And that's what we're going through. That's why, same thing that your grandparents went through. We gotta go through. You know what I'm saying? They live in a project. Now we growing up in these little, bad conditions and all this stuff, right? Baby mama drama. You know what I'm saying? You witness your parents go through their little baby mama, baby daddy drama. Now in your relationship, you having baby mama, baby daddy drama, right? So all these things is being passed down to our kids. That's called a generational curse. Why? Because we have not kept the commandments of God. We are under contract with the God. We're gonna get into that, right? So it says, and it should be upon thee for a sign. Meaning, when you see these things, as we reading these things in this book, and you start thinking about the conditions of our people, you be like, wow, that did happen to us. That is true. That happened. Then it says, and then you'll be able to draw and like, well, start connecting. Like, well, maybe we are the Israelites, because like I said, when you know history, it didn't happen to those people with the curly shit on the side and the little circle on the top of their head. It didn't happen to them. So it says, because thou serve not Yahweh thy power with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Because we didn't want to serve God with joyfulness, we thought it was so strenuous to keep the commandments. We wanted to do like everybody else, want to follow these other nations and do what they're doing instead of doing what we're supposed to do. See, now this is proof right here. When you get into all those extra biblical books, and you start seeing the Greek influences on them, right? Because you can tell by the language that they use and how they say things. You know that is fake because that wasn't never what we did. Because right here it's showing you that we had laws that we, you know, not supposed to deal with these things. So now this is now 47 is getting into like the punishment or the penalty for not keeping that law. It says, because thou serve not God with joyfulness and gladness of thy heart for abundance of all things. Therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which the Lord thy God shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst. So since we don't want to depend on God, we want to be like everybody else. We start trying to worship other gods, right? And that's what happened. It says we should serve our enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, because we don't own any grocery stores, that we get our food from. Those people own it. We don't own any water companies or any Coca-Cola, Pepsi, any type of beverage companies like that. We get it from them. Even if you do got a few celebrities that got their own vodkas and cognacs, they don't own they just got their name on it. They, what I'm saying, they ain't got the farm and the little plants, the little all that distilleries. We don't own no distilleries, right? We might have the money to work with somebody that can help, that can partner up with us, then we put our name on it. But so even if you is a celebrity like a Jay-Z or something, we're still under these things. Kanye was at one point was the richest black man to ever live in America, and you saw how they got down on him and took his money away. So that lets you know it don't matter, because a lot of us is trapped up in that trap thinking if we got money, that's all that matters. That's because a lot of us have made money our god. Okay, you ask somebody, um, if I give you $1 million, would you stop eating pork? And they be like, yeah. Then you say, well, if God told you to stop eating pork, would you stop eating pork? They be like, well, I don't know. It's gonna be hard. I gotta see. So that's proof that we made money our God rather than Yahweh our God. So that's why it says, thou shalt serve thy enemies. So God is making you serve the people that hate you, because these people are not your friend. Your friend wouldn't put you in slavery and have discriminative laws against you and shoot you dead in the street for reaching for your ID. It says, so the Lord shall send, which the Lord send against thee in hunger and thirst and nakedness and want of all things. Anything that we ever want, we got to go to them to get it, right? Driver's license, got to go to them. You want to open up a beauty salon, got to go to them. You want to go to beauty school, you got to go to them. All that stuff. You want to go to college and get your diploma, you got to learn what they tell you to learn, right? So it says, in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he had destroyed thee. And that's what he did. He destroyed us. That's why they can let us off the plantation, because we're nothing but trained dogs at this point. Just like when you train a dog, you can take the leash off of them for, at a point. So it says, and the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from fire, from the ends of the earth, as swift as an eagle flieth. And we know the symbol of America is an eagle, right? All these European nations at one point in time use an eagle as their symbol, as their national symbol. So it says, and the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from one end of the earth, that is swift as an eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. We didn't understand that gibberish when they came over here speaking English, or that Spanish stuff they came over here speaking. But they beat us and they forced us to speak Spanish and English. And we so messed up our Hispanic brothers, Latino brothers. They don't even they to the point where they don't remember that they didn't speak Spanish all the time. You can't tell a Mexican that Spanish is not their real language. They're gonna look at you like you're crazy. And they forget that Christopher killing Columbus and Cortez and all of them niggers came over here beating the hell out of them and forcing them to speak these languages. Just like we got beaten the hell out of and forced to speak these languages, right? So it says, in a nation of fierce continents, meaning they're going to be some ferocious, evil-minded people, right? Evil-minded. What type of person would cut a pregnant woman belly open, hang her upside down, and cut a pregnant woman belly open, right? What type of person would take a little baby and feed them to alligators? Evil-minded people, right? It says, a nation of fierce continence uh, that shall not regard the person of old nor show favor to the young. They didn't care if you was old as hell in the cotton field picking cotton. Your ass better be out there. They don't care. They didn't care if you was 2, 3 years old. If you old enough to move, then grab a damn bag and put cotton in it. That's how they felt, right? They didn't care, right? It says they should not uh, regard the person of old nor show favor to the young. Meaning they're not going to be lenient. They're not going to be, you know, well, maybe I shouldn't treat them like this. They're old, so I'm not gonna do them like that. Or no, that's just a little kid. I'm not gonna put them on a plantation like that, or I'm not gonna take them for their mother and sell them across the county to somebody else. No, it says they are a nation of fierce continence which shall not regard the person of old and not show favor to the young. That's how they got down, right? Just jump down to 50, verse 54. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil towards his brother. Talking about black on black crime. Our people, that's how our people are. The so-called man with the Jewish man, their eye is not evil towards their brother. You see over there right now on the news, they're sticking by each other. Even the ones over here talking about pray for some damn Israelis. Man, damn that damn Israeli people. All right, forget all of them except one. Matter of fact, forget him too. All of them, right? So they don't have an evil eye towards each other. Chinese people, they don't have an evil eye. They can see another Chinese person, they give them a nod, they'll bow to each other. But us black people, when we see each other, we want to size each other up. We want to see if we can take this person or not. We want to ask ourselves, what this motherfucker looking at when they see us, right? When we see each other, right? It says, so that the man that is tender among you, his eyes should be evil towards his brother. Because at one time we was tender towards each other. We will see each other in the street. We be like, hey, how you doing? How's your family doing? Hey, you need anything? What's going on? You all right? You straight? That's how we used to treat each other. But now our eyes evil towards each other, right? Gang violence, black on black crime, right? Let's keep going. His eyes should be evil towards his brother and towards the wife of his bosom. So not only are we evil towards ourselves and people that look like us, now we mistreating our women, being disrespectful to our women, domestic violence, you know, cursing her out, calling her all out of her name, right? Then it says, and towards the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. So who leads our people are known for, you know, uh, having single parent homes. A lot of us grew up without the father in the house. And if you had your father in the house, then maybe you was one of the lucky ones. But a lot of us grew up without having our fathers in the house. So it says he's going to be evil towards his wife and towards his children, and he shall leave them. And that's what happened in our communities. A lot of fathers done left their children. You know, either whether for even if it was for the sake of the mother, or they probably wasn't ready to be a father, but they're not in the house. Just like how it says right here, how our people is not going to be in the house. This is how we know this is talking about us, right? That God is speaking to us, not the whole world. The whole world cannot lay claim to these things that we're reading. And I'm just skipping over a few, not because I had to, just because I wanted to, just for time's sake. Because we went through this before. We read all of this before. I had a video where we went through every last one of these, right? Then let's jump down to 56. And the tender and delicate woman among you which would not adventure to set her soul or foot upon the ground for the delicateness and tenderness, her eyes should be evil towards her husband. So now you got our woman that used to be so delicate where she didn't even really want to come outside barefooted. She didn't want to put her foot on the ground, right? Now she's cursing out her man. Now she's being disrespectful to her man. Now she's, being masculine and demasculizing her man, right? Then it says, Her eyes shall be evil towards her husband of her bosom, and towards her son, and towards her daughter. So now she's, even taking her frustration out on her kids, right? Saying, "Oh, I get out my face. I can't stand you. You look just like your daddy." All that crazy stuff that a lot of our sisters do, right? So so we see this applies to us. No, not everybody can say this is going on with them. This is stuff that only goes, applied to us, right? And so it's like I said, it's a lot of stuff that our people go through. Like I said, and it's all written here. Now, it's other chapters and verses that we go to prove that who we are. But like I said, this is clear enough. Chapter 28 in Deuteronomy is clear enough to what we go through, right? Then says yeah, she'll be evil towards her husband and towards her son and towards her daughter, right? And let's jump down to 64. So let's jump down to 64 real quick. So it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth to the other." And how did we get scattered among all people? Through slavery, through the transatlantic slave trade. That's how we got scattered throughout the earth, right? Then it says, from one end of the earth to the other, and there uh, thou shalt serve other gods. And that's what we're doing in these other nations. We're serving other gods. Like when we came over here, they forced us into Christianity. You know what I'm saying? A lot of our people are forced into Islam. You know, some of our people is following Buddhism and Hinduism and all the other stuff, right? So it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all nations from one end of the earth to the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thy father have known, and even wood and stone." So that's what happened when we got scattered to these different areas. We start that wood is the cross. The stone is that little cobblestone that the Muslim people like to circle around and kiss. And over there in the Mecca. So that's what it is. Then it says, let's jump down. Let's go to 66. "And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee." Our young people, especially when we was growing up, we used to always say, "Man, I didn't think we was gonna make. I didn't think I was gonna make it to C-25." Right? We hear that type of talk all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like growing up, like man, you make it past 25. That was whoo. Some now some of our young people is saying that they didn't think they was gonna make it to C-21. Right? So it says, "Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee." The Jewish man life is not hanging in damn doubt. They run every goddamn thing, right? I don't. Jewish people ain't walking around talking about how they got a switch on them right now. You know what I'm saying? How they just have to slide on one of their ops. You know what I'm saying? They spending blocks on. They ain't talking like that, or they can't go into certain neighborhoods because I can't go over there, man. I got beef. They ain't talking like that. Even where they at now over there, where all hell is breaking loose, praise God. They ain't talking like that because they still have the military might to do what they need to do, right? So it says, um, "Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night." That's what our young people is doing. A lot of our young people, especially living in this street life, they don't know what's going on, right? What I'm saying? They living in these different, living in this street life, and like I said, they don't know if they're gonna make it home. What I'm saying? They get into it with people, a fight, a simple argument can turn into a fight can turn into a murder. Just that quick, right? That's why it says, "Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and thou shalt have no assurance of life." And that's how our people is. That's why like when we was growing up, we used to say, "Man, I didn't think I was gonna make it to C-25." Man, the way I was going, I didn't know I was gonna make it to C-21, right? That's why we talk like that, right? Because it tells you that our life is not gonna we're not gonna be having assurance of life, meaning we're not gonna know we're gonna make it out of our situation or not, right? Just get just jump down to 68 real quick. Right? Let's jump down to 68. So now 68 says, "And the Lord thy God shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." So it's talking about we're going into slavery on slave ships. Because when you understand, when the Bible speaks about Egypt in this context, it's talking about slavery, right? So God is saying He's going to bring us into slavery on ships. Then if you know history, then you know that we are the only ones that went into slavery on cargo slave ships, right? And it says, "And the Lord thy God shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt not see it no more again." So he's saying so basically saying it's gonna happen exactly the way I'm telling you it's gonna happen. You're gonna go into slave ships, uh, and be taken into captivity, and you're not gonna see Egypt again when it's talking about slavery or dang boy, what's up? And the thing keeps bothering me. Well, we almost done. Yeah. Hey, boom. Get back. So yeah, dang, my bad. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Oh yeah, so he said we're not gonna see the homeland again. We're not gonna see. He's not talking about the physical Egypt. We're talking about we're going on these slave ships and we're getting taken to these different various places that they shipped us off to. So it says, "And the Lord shall bring thee," and read it like how it says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into slavery again with ships, by the whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies." So what happened when we got off those slave ships? We were sold to our enemies. We sold to our enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Meaning that's the old, you know, term for redeem, because basically saying nobody's going to be able to redeem us out of our situation. Only one that can redeem us is the Mashiach Yahweh Shah. That's why we're still stuck here in America, right? Because it says no man will be able to redeem us. And it says we should be sold unto our enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And who bought us? When the Bible says we sold to our enemies, who bought us? What is your last name? What is your European last name? That's who your enemy is. These people that bought and sold you, right? Let's get um, Isaiah 42 real quick. Isaiah 42 and 22. Right? Isaiah 42 and 22 says, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled," right? Because our people have been robbed and we have been taken advantage of, right? That's what it means by spoiled. So, "For this is a people robbed and spoiled. All of them are snared in holes. They are hidden in prison houses," right? So we know that our people make up 80% of the inmates in jail here in America. It says we are hidden in prison houses. So we further proven. So not only can we read Deuteronomy 28 to prove who we are, we can go to Isaiah and see who we are as well. So it says, "But these are people robbed and spoiled. They are snared in holes. They are hidden in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none deliver for a spoil is none said restore." So meaning nobody's trying to eradicate the situation, fix our situation, right? Because they happy to see us down. So just see. I just want to see how it reads in the GMT real quick. Let's read it. I'm gonna read it over here real quick. 42:22. So yeah, here we go. It says, "But now his people have been plundered," meaning we've been robbed, we've been plundered. "They are locked up in dungeons." Because that's what happened. That's what, another name for prison, a dungeon. "They are hidden away in prisons. That's what we do. They put us deep down in a prisons. You know what I'm saying? They have what's our brother Larry Hoover. They had that man in solitary for many years, right? Uh, you know, Jeff Ford. All of our people been locked up for many years, solitary, right? And it says they are hidden away in prisons. They are robbed and plundered with no one to come to their rescue. That's how our people is. Nobody to come to our rescue, right? So that's what we're going through here, you know. So we know that we are the people because those so-called people with the curly stuff on the side of their head and the little hats on the top, they can't say this happened to them. But we know this is happening to us because we see the statistics that show that we are the main people that they focus on when it comes to locking people up. It's the reason why a white person that commits the same crime as we commit, they get less time, right? For the same crime that we'll commit. Then we'll commit that same crime and they will down there throw the book at us, right? So we know what's going on here. So let's get Zechariah 11 and 15 real quick. I mean 11 and 5, my bad. 11 and 5, it says, "Who possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty." So what happens when these police officers oftentimes shoot us dead in the street? It says, "Hold themselves not guilty." When they go to court and they, fighting a case, and then they say, "Oh, justified homicide" is what they used to say, right? It says, "Who possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty." We know that happens to our people. Our people, oftentimes, we don't, we want justice, but we know oftentimes we should not be able to expect justice to come, right? Because it says, "Who possesses slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sells them," because they sold us, "blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not." So they think, and this is the pride of white people, because they think because God didn't punish them, for what they have done to us, and they've been able to live this voluptuous life here in America off our backs, that God is okay with it. That's what it says. "Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich." So they think because all the wealth they gained off of us, that $4.7 trillion they made off of enslaving us, a free labor that they made off enslaving us, right? And more, if you want to count it to the current day, they say, "Blessed be the Lord, I am rich." They think God is with that. It says, "And their shepherds pity them not," meaning our leaders, our people that we put up as leadership, they're in cahoots with this system. That's why pastor don't talk about this type of stuff. Pastor's too busy trying to, swoon you, make you feel good enough to give him some money. That's the only thing he care about is trying to cash out at the end of the day. He's not actually trying to save your soul, right? But when you keep the commandments and the laws and the faith, that's what's going to get us up out of here, right? So let's go back to Deuteronomy real quick. Let's go to 28. Deuteronomy 28 and 32. And it says, "And thou shalt become astonishment." Oh, no, my bad. Let me jump up. Trying to pay. It says, "Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look for fell and longing for them." So we know, like I said, during slavery, when they used to take our children from us and sell them to other people, we couldn't do nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? We couldn't fight master and get our kids back. We had to just sit there and take that and cry for however long we had to cry for it, right? Even our Mexican brothers and our other South American brothers that's coming in here, they getting their children taken from the border, thrown in cages, wrapped in aluminum foil, being separated. You know what I'm saying? They can't do nothing about that. They don't got no might in their hand to do that. It says, "And look and fell for longing for them all day long, and there shall be no might in their hand." And that's what happens. There's no might in our hand to fight against those things, right? Because you got to understand, this stuff is happening to us because we are the people of God, and and God like I said, when you read Deuteronomy 28, that is a list of punishments that God said will happen to us, right? So this is everything that God will do to us whenever we disobey, right? So let's get Deuteronomy 29 real quick to prove how we are in contract with God, right? Oh my God, leave this alone. Go sit down somewhere now. Hey, Salaki. So yeah, let's get 29 real quick. It says, "These are the words of the government of the covenant which the Lord thy God command Moses to make with the children of Israel." So the covenant is a contract, right? That's the contract that we're under. It says, "These are the words of the covenant which the Lord thy God command Moses to make with the children of Israel." Right? Not the whole world. So this is not a book for everybody. This is for the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. Right? So we're under contract with God. Right? That's so a contract has clauses. If you don't fulfill your end of the contract, then there's penalties that can happen. So when you read Deuteronomy 28, uh, from 15 all the way down to 68, those are the clauses that can happen to us whenever we don't fill our part of the agreement, right? So let's get let's get let's go to Deuteronomy 26 real quick. 26 and 17, right? So it says, "Thou hast vouched the Lord this day to be thy God, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes and commandments, and the judgment, to hearken unto his voice." Right. So now these are, so like I said, so basically saying we just showing you the contract agreement. So we agreed that God will be our God. Right. Says, "Thou hast vouched the Lord this day to be thy God." Right? So we said, yes, he will be our God. Yahweh, that power will be our God. We said that, right? Then it says, "and walk in his ways," meaning keep his commandments, to keep his statutes and commandments and his judgments, right? That pastor tells us that we don't have to do. So we see pastor is telling us things that break the commandments, that make that make these causes in the contract to come to fruition, to keep us deeper into this subjugated state that we are as a people, because it says that to keep the statutes and commandments and his judgments, and to hearken unto his voice, meaning to do what he tells us to do. "And the Lord have vouched thee," and so God is saying he has vouched thee this day to be his peculiar people. So God said, okay, you accept me as your God, I'm accepting you as my people. So we're signing the contract together, right? You know, when you sign a contract and y'all both agree on the terms and the conditions. So we're both doing that right now. We're signing the conditions of the contract, and we're signing our name by it. And it says, "This day to be his peculiar people, uh, as he had promised thee, and that thou shouldest keep his commandments." Again, so he's like, okay, since you agreeing to keep my commandments, I'm gonna be your God, right? Then it says, "and to make thee high above all nations, which he have made in praise, and has made in praise, and make high above all nations which he had made in praise, and in the name and in honor." So in return, he's going to make us high above all nations, and people are going to praise us and say, "Oh, those are such great people. Look how good they are. Look how holy they are. Look how great they are." They're not going to just talk about how good we can play basketball, or how far we can throw a football, or how good we can sing. They're going to talk about all of our greatness, right? Then it says, um, "to made in praise and in name and honor, and that thou mayest be a holy people unto the uh, Lord thy God, Yahweh thy power. Hold on. Yeah. So Yahweh thy power, right? So let's get this really quick. We almost done here. Let's go to chapter 7 real quick. Hold on. What's this name? All right, we're gonna have to rock with it. We only got a few more to go anyway. So then let's get 7 real quick. Because it says it's gonna make us above all nations, right? So Deuteronomy 7 and 6 says, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. God has chosen thee to be a special people. Like he said, that's he's going to make us a special people. That's why we're so cold at everything we do, because we are a special people unto thy, unto himself above all nations that are on the face of the earth. So while we're trying to fight for equal rights with people, God said we are above all nations on the face of the earth. Right? Hold on 1 second. I gotta fix this. So yeah, it's like it. So we are above all nations on the face of the earth, right? So like I said, while we're trying to fight for these equal rights and all that stuff, this is what God says and how He created us, how He made us, how He chose us, and what He wants us to be, right? Then let's get Leviticus 20 real quick, because Leviticus 20 and 26, and it says, "And ye shall be a holy unto me, for I am the Lord, for I am Yahweh, I am holy, and I have severed you from other people, that ye may be mine." So we are God's. He said He separated us from other people. That's why we're so different than everybody else. That's why everything we do is so different, you know, and that's why oh shit, hold on. Hey, boy. Uh, boom. But yeah, that's why we're so different from everybody else, Salakia. That's why we're so different from everybody else, right? Because he it says, "And ye shall be a holy people unto me, for I am the Lord, I am holy. I has severed you," meaning He separated us from other people, that you should be mine. So God chose us to be His. This is what He's saying out of His own mouth. But the Christian church don't want to teach that message. They want to teach we are the world type stuff. But God is not all about we are the world. We act like we forgot about what happened at the Tower of Babel, because we wanted to be all we are the world during that time. And God separated us and split us up and forced us to go to different nations, right? Not, the people. He made all the people go into their respective nations where because He told them where to go, right? And they didn't want to go there. Let's get this real quick. Let's get this the last one. Let's get Romans 9 and 4, right? To prove it. Let's start at let's start at 4. So Romans 9 and 4. Who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoptions? So let's start at 3. For I wish I could myself be accursed from Christ for my brethren and my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites. So Paul is basically saying that he wish he could have went through what Jesus went through, for his people. Then it says, then he goes into saying, who are Israelites who pertain of the adoption. Because Christians are always talking about, well, you can get adopted in, you can get adopted in. But who does it say the adoption is for? Who are Israelites who pertain to the adoption. So this is not for everybody. A Chinese person cannot wake up one day and be an Israelite. Just like you can't wake up and say, I'm going to be Chinese tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It has to be in your blood. It says, for who are Israelites who pertain to adoption in the glory, in the covenants, in the giving of the law, in the services of God, in the promises. This all pertains to us, right? That's who it's all for, right? And it says, who are Israelites who pertain to adoption. So all that adoption stuff they like talking about when it comes to because we in the New Testament, and so all the adoption stuff they talking about is it says pertain to the Israelites, the glory, the powers of God, right? To the Israelites, the covenants with an S at the end, meaning the old covenant and the new covenant, the Israelites, and the giving of the law. Hold on. Yeah, my bad. So in the giving of the law, right? The Israelites, Salakia, the Israelites, right? The Israelites. So and then what else it says? It says boom boom boom. In the services of God, meaning the preaching, the the evangelist stuff, the Israelites. Then it says and the promises, all everything that God promised that He was going to do is for the Israelites. So yes, we are the Israelites, right? And this is how we prove that we are the Israelites. This is how we prove that we are the Israelites. And then once we prove that we are the Israelites, we show you the benefits of being an Israelite because all that stuff belongs to us, right? So, like I said, we have history, archaeology, and prophecy to back our claims. Like how I showed you that through the prophecies, Isaiah predicted Cyrus the Great 200 years before he was born. Daniel predicted all these different world powers that will come into power throughout the ages, right? Solomon predicted the image of the false Jesus Christ, uh, who the image which is made who actually posed for the image, Cesar Borgia. He spoke on that, and that was like 3,000 years ago. So we see that when you understand prophecy, the prophecy proves itself because we're living in 2023. We can look back over history and see that these things happen, that the Bible said was going to happen. So this is how we know these things are true, right? So then, you know, then going to the stuff that proving that we are the people, we can look at our own history that happened and read through the different things that the Bible said was going to happen to the Israelites, and that only lines up with us, not the so-called Jewish man with the little curly shit on the side and the little saucer sitting on top of his head. He doesn't fit none of this stuff. That's why they don't believe in the Bible, because I mean, he don't fit none of it at all, right? So and that's why, like I said, they don't believe in this stuff. They have what they call the Mishnah, and they got all these other little separate books that they like reading out of, but they can't go into the Bible to prove who they are. They just got a lot of conjecture, right? So we see who we are, right? And we can use history, archaeology, and biblical prophecy to prove our points, right? It's not that hard to figure out. Just that we don't like to do the necessarily research and check these things out on our own. We want to, like I said, so it's easy for us to just believe whatever people tell us. Then our people are in love with pseudoness. We love fantasy fiction, fantasy stuff. to and so we get caught up in this whole sci-fi stuff and acting like that's like it's some truth to it. Rather having the spirit of discernment to understand that that's it's pseudo, right? Pseudo means fake, right? And so, like I said, so we have these capabilities of understanding these things, right? We just need to actually read and be taught the proper way of how to how this stuff is, right? Because we just went through the whole shebang, right? Proven through the history, proven you know through the prophecies how we know what we know, and we're not just saying stuff because it sounds cool to say, right? So with that, I'm gonna say shalom, peace, all that cool stuff. Hopefully, we got a better understanding, and excuse the technical difficulties because camera kept messing up, falling down, but it's all good. We got through it. So, say shalom, peace, all that cool stuff. Till next time.